Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Lesroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.
Welcome to Working for You. I am Lesroy Williams. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's program. We appreciate your company from week to week. Today we are here to discuss International Women's Day and all the issues surrounding International Women's Day. The celebration of women, women's contributions, and women's achievements within our society. My guest today, I have a well-packed panel today, starting with Mrs. Celia Christopher, who is the director in the Department of Gender Affairs. Mrs. Christopher, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Then I have Miss Sylvine Henry, who is well known, social commentator. Miss Henry, welcome.
Good afternoon.
And then Mrs. Sarah Owen, who is the director of the UWI Open Campus Continuing and Professional Education Center. Mrs. Owen, welcome to this program.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And I have former director of the Department of Gender Affairs, Miss Ingrid Charles Gums. Welcome to this program.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Good afternoon, everyone.
So I have four professional and powerful women here to speak today to women's issues and how women are impacting positively our society. Now, globally, International Women's Day is celebrated on March 8th, which is this Friday coming. And it is a date set by the United Nations. Generally, it is a day set aside to celebrate women, womanhood, and the contributions and achievements of women in society. It is a focal point in the movement for women's rights. In some countries, it is largely ignored. And in others, it is a day of protest. Also, it is a public holiday in some countries. International Women's Day sparked violence in Tehran, Iran on March 4th, 2007. Police beat hundreds of men and women who were planning a rally in commemoration of International Women's Day. And in some countries, the celebration of the day is still seen as a relic of the communist past in terms of how it started. But today we're here to discuss. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we celebrate International Women's Day. Mrs. Christopher, I'm going to start the ball rolling with you. What is the significance of celebrating International Women's Day and an entire month to boot in St. Kitts and Nevis at that, when in some countries the celebration is for only one day?
The whole objective of celebrating International Women's Day is threefold in St. Kitts and Nevis. We want to commemorate, we are commemorating International Women's Day. We want to raise awareness of women's contribution locally, and we also would undertake to award those women who have made significant contribution to the economy of the country. So we have three objectives for doing this. This year, we will be awarding women in 9 categories, in 8 categories, and there is a special award. We have award for education, but specifically for community after-school activity. Now, why I say community? Because the impact of these awards that we're giving out should be based on the impact that is made in the community after hours, not that you have worked 25 years somewhere and we want to give you an award. We want to look at your contribution to the communities. We also
So it is not length of service, it's
No,
the
this has
impact of your
nothing to do with
service.
length of service. This has to do with the impact of your work in the community after you would have done your normal 8 to 4 hours.
Right, and how do you go about determining the impact?
We talk to NGOs. We ask NGOs for their input as to who are these people that are doing work in the community. That not that they have been ignored, but have not been brought to the fore, and hence the award for these people.
Do you speak to the people themselves who have been
No,
impacted?
what we do, we send out nominations, we send out letters inviting them to send nominations.
Okay.
So they will nominate someone. When it comes in, we have judges and all of that who goes to the nomination, look at the impact that they have made, because anybody can nominate anybody, but as I said before, we have to look at the impact of their work. So leave that for the judges to decide.
Okay.
Okay. So the other area we have is technology, youth volunteerism. This is something we want to encourage, because we have there are a lot of young people out there, and sometimes they have a lot of time on their hands. So if they could just do something positive in the community, we want to encourage that. Then we have the contribution to the care of the elderly. We are now witnessing an aging population, and we have to start thinking about how are we going to take care of people like all of us sitting here when we get to that age where we can't take care of ourselves. So we want to, those people who are out there doing that difficult job, we want to make sure that they're recognized. Then you have culture, the development of culture, which is very important. You still have people out there who want to preserve our culture, and that is something that we encourage. So wherever we find them, we'll recognize them.
Yes.
Agriculture, well, this is connected to food security and all of that, and we have women who have been making significant contribution. Although they are not there in large numbers, we have women there who have been making significant contribution, and that need to be highlighted. We now add a new category, disaster management. Most times in disaster situation, women are the ones who are mostly affected, because they have the family, they have to look after everybody, and sometimes forget themselves. So we don't want to leave them out in that particular area. And entrepreneurship, those women who are trying their hands at their little small business, some of them have been successful, and so we want to reward them for the success in their businesses. But there's a special award, and that's the Prime Minister's Award. He gets to choose someone who he will give an award to in whatever area he chooses. And I think this year it's going to be in entrepreneurship as well.
Okay. Right. Now, what do you hope to achieve by highlighting women's contributions in society? And how does the Department of Gender Affairs hope to concretely do this? Now, you mentioned about the awards, but I do know that you have a schedule of activities for an entire month, the month of March.
Yes, the activity started with a statement by the minister. Then we went to church on Sunday. The department worshipped at the Catholic Church on Sunday. And then we have the International Women's Day Award. There is a documentary on the oldest woman in St. Kitts and Nevis. We are hoping to get that to you as quickly as possible, so people can see who she is, and we can talk about her contribution. And then we have a documentary of Project Viola, because we also want to talk about the girls too, where they are and what is happening to them. We have the distribution of care packages to females who are incarcerated. This has been a new program in the department. It's about a year old, 2 years old, and so we are working with women, because we know whenever they're most times in the prison, the men are the one who are really get the academics and all of that. So we are working with them to impart skills and all of that, and so to them, so that when they would have left there, they're better off than when they went in there. And that program, so far, 2 of the females have been released, and one has now gone into daycare. She has her own daycare center, and there's another one who's doing cosmetology. So we try to make sure that on their release back into society, that there are jobs for them and so on, so that they don't revert to whatever situation put them in the first place. And then we have a post-launch consultation on the domestic violence and complaint and response protocol. This is a workshop that we're going to be having around the 21st of March. And it is to look at the domestic violence protocol and the roles of each stakeholder under that protocol. We have been dealing with domestic violence, but in a very ad hoc fashion. And so we want to do it professionally and do it in a structured way. So we are now going to bring all the stakeholders together, and we're going to look at the legislation, make sure that everything is in line, so everybody can carry out their duties in a professional manner. And then we have presentations to schools, colleges, and workplaces. We go into these workplaces and schools and so on.
Yes.
We take our message into them and so on, because we want everybody to be a part of this whole celebration of women. So that's it in a
Okay.
nutshell from the Department of Gender Affairs.
Right. So you have quite a packed schedule for the month of March.
Yes.
An entire month to celebrate women. Not that women should be celebrated in just one month. I think they should
No,
be
we should
celebrated
all year through.
all year through. But this is just to highlight
Special.
and to showcase how women are contributing, to appreciate them, to acknowledge
Right.
them, and so on, to put their work on a pedestal.
And it is
for
important
everybody to
because
see.
we make up over 50% of the population, so people need to hear about our contribution to the economy. We are doing work and a lot of it is not being paid, but we are doing work.
Right. You are.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to move to Mrs. Owen in terms of education. Now, women play an important role in education. In fact, in the Caribbean, women are dominating the field of education. Maybe you can give us some statistics, or I don't know if you have, in terms of the percentage of female graduates at the University of the West Indies compared to males. And how does this shift the balance of power and influence in Caribbean society, or does it?
Okay, well, I think the latter part of your question is the harder part to answer, so I'll definitely start with the first part of your question. And we actually had a little bit of a pre-panel discussion outside when we were waiting for the program to start. That's one of the issues you were discussing, was the reality that we actually have a huge disparity in enrollment when we look at the male to female ratio in our undergraduate programs. In fact, the Open Campus is really looking at life-changing learning. So we're looking at a number of pathways to learning. So we have prior learning assessment, we have continuing education, we have continuing professional education, we have undergraduate degrees, we have graduate degrees at the master's and doctoral level. And from what I've seen, that across every single one of these pathways to learning, we are seeing more women, more females enrolled than males. And it's interesting because sometimes when we have international agencies that are looking at funding programs, they may have a clause in there that says, how are you going to encourage female participation? You spoke about the various ways that International Women's Day is received throughout the world, and the
Yes.
various ways it's celebrated. And sometimes I think that we forget that we are in a very different position to a lot of the world when we're looking at access to education for girls
Yes.
and women. Our issue, we have to respond when they say that, is actually we need strategies to ensure that we have our young men enrolling, or all of our men, children, young men, not so young men enrolling. So we have, for our enrollment data by gender, I was looking specifically at continuing and professional education, especially as that's the area that I'm working in. And I was looking at 2017 to 2018 data, and we have 67% female enrollment there and 31% male
Wow.
across the region for the Open Campus. But I looked specifically at the St. Kitts data also for that period, again in continuing and professional education. And we had in St. Kitts 78% female, 18% male. And in Nevis, we had 75% female, 16% male. And as the discussion progresses, I do have some more data here on the undergraduate and graduate
Sure.
enrollment, but
All right,
it's generally quite similar. So I can pull the actual statistics, but you can just accept, or we can accept, that that is going to be pretty much the same. In terms of how that translates to the workplace, and this was part of what we were discussing earlier as well. So I think that Ms. Gums might be in a better position to speak to looking at wage gaps and things like that in terms of what the actual earning and economic activity is. And Ms. Christopher, you spoke to 50% of the population as female. So we're having a huge sort of transition when we're looking at the enrollment in education, and then we're looking at the engagement in employment, but also in certain types of employment. So when we look at all of this, it's important that we don't make these generalized statements, because we really need to look at each element of economic development, each element of education, because even when we look at the St. Kitts and Nevis education policy review that was done in 2016, and when they examined, for example, school leaving population and looking at early school leavers, so those who are exiting the system prior to fifth form, still you have predominantly males who are exiting when you're looking at the gender ratio there. So there's a lot that we'll need to do to get our males more engaged, and there's a lot that we need to continue to work on. But we also need to transition our discussion from the enrollment in higher education to the engagement in economic activity. And as Mrs. Christopher said, there is a lot of engagement, but what is the level of engagement? Where is this engagement taking place? What type of earning is taking place? Undoubtedly it's taking place, but is it taking place in a way that is fair and equitable? Because that's actually what the UN Sustainable Development Goal 4 speaks to equity. So for education, it says ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So that's the other thing that we need to consider. We have a very, to my mind, restricted way of viewing education. So when we hear education, we think of formal schooling. So we think of preschool, primary school, secondary school, university. But the root of the word, and I know you like language and root words and literature and so on, but the root word for education is educere, which some will look at as simply meaning to lead forth. That's one of the translations that we can draw on. And that's really, to me, I always try to come back to that simplest root meaning. And if what we're doing is not leading people forth, then are we actually engaged in education? So I think that there's a lot that we can do from just kind of keeping that concept at the core.
Actually that root word goes to culture. An educated person is a cultured person. Yes. Lifelong. Culture.
But then that may have certain connotations that all may not agree with when you're using the term cultured, because that could be a controversial term
but
too.
Actually in Spanish, when a person is rude and impolite, they say, it's in Spanish, say, no tiene educación. That is actually what it translates to. The person is not educated. The person does not have education. Because education is what makes the human being. Immanuel Kant told us that.
And it happens everywhere. It happens in school, it happens outside of school. We're all
informal or
engaged in
formal,
education.
exactly. It is what informs our behavior.
It is the key to the development of a person.
Yes, the key to development of a person. So we didn't touch on the theme. What's the theme?
The theme for
the
this
official
year.
theme.
Yes, the official
Mrs.
theme for this
Christopher.
year is Think Equal, Build Smart, and Innovate for Change.
Right, and there's some slogans that go along with it as well. Better the balance, better the world. Really speaking to gender balance.
Yes, right.
And there's still a lot of gender disparity, gender imbalance and bias and all of that sort of a thing, which we will discuss a little bit on. But I'm going to come to something with that right now, and I still want to stay with you, Mrs. Owen. Women have made substantial roads in STEM fields and careers over the past few years, but there's still a long way to go. We're talking now about the development of societies and how science and technology and engineering and math is helping societies to develop, especially in this age in which we live. Do you think enough is being done to promote a STEM education with respect to women in the Caribbean? And or do you basically believe that these areas are still dominated by gender bias? And what do you think is best practice for employers who want to attract more women into STEM industries? So quite a bit there.
Well, the enrollment of more females and males is pretty much across the board. So in all faculties, in all departments, that's generally what you see, which would include the STEM subjects as well. But you mentioned that women have been doing a lot recently in STEM subjects, but women have been doing a lot in STEM for, all time, so historically.
Yeah.
But I think it also comes to the story that's being told, and historically who told the story. And if the women were not engaged in the storytelling, then it's only now that we're finding out that many things that we thought were invented by men were actually invented by women. So then you have movies like Hidden Figures and so on that, in 2019 shouldn't shock us and surprise us as much as they do. So I think that there is a lot that is being done. There are many female scientists that are making great strides, that are incredibly innovative. So again, I think I really don't have the answers that speak necessarily to the employment side and the what could be done to encourage more women in the work of anything STEM related. But I think it would be important for us to actually check what the balance is like in those fields.
Do you think mentoring, for example?
But do we know
women
that
mentoring?
Yeah. But do we know that there aren't that there isn't a predominance of women in these industries in the region also? That's something that we would need to check to see, what the actual statistics tell us. So without those statistics, and maybe we could do a little research while we're here on the program, but without those statistics, then it would be guesswork, really.
Yeah.
But I think that, mentorship is always very important. But I think also what we need to do a better job of is telling our stories. So to come back to that point, so where we do have women scientists, for example, female mathematicians that are doing, I through LinkedIn actually connected with a Trinidadian neuroscientist, and I was overwhelmed by what she was doing. And she makes one comment and tens of thousands of people like it, share it. And she's from Trinidad. She's based overseas, and she's doing tremendous work. And if I didn't find her there, I wouldn't know about this story. So what I think we need to do more of is tell the stories, the success stories of the women who are achieving, especially in fields where we don't think they are achieving. So we look at women in education, we look at women as teachers, we look at women, in a number of fields that we've traditionally viewed them in, but we still are surprised when we hear of the woman scientist or the woman engineer, and we shouldn't be, because there are so many.
They have been in these fields, but for some reason their contribution has been suppressed for whatever reason, but they have always been there.
Right.
They have always been there, but the suppression has come from the stereotyping and the bias within the society that says, Miss Gums mentioned this when I came into the studio. She said, "You're wearing pink. You're comfortable in pink." And I said, "Yes, I'm comfortable in pink." Because once ago, you used to have these stereotypes: boys blue and girls pink, and all kinds of assumptions and so on that went along with just the color. And that is why I asked that question of Mrs. Owen, because we still have some of those perceptions. When we see, for example, a female mechanic or a female construction worker, what really comes to mind? Do you see them as really being equal on the construction plant as the male? You still see some sort of, maybe perhaps, it's unconscious. It's unconscious that somehow they are inferior. That they are less than, and so on. Or what is she doing in that field? That's a male-dominated field. She has no business there among all these males and so on. And, unconsciously, we still have those biases.
I like to tell a story, of a lady who I saw. I was coming to work, and she was driving a backhoe. And the reaction of the men, I had to stop and just pay attention to the men. Because it was like, what the hell am I seeing here? A woman driving a backhoe, and he's trying to draw the attention to the other men to show them what else do they want. And that was the
Yes.
reaction, and I'm like,
But you know, on that note, a colleague of mine who is the head of the Women and Development Unit, I was speaking to her about the theme for this year's International Women's Day, and she was saying that, you know, the ability and the capacity to do these things is there's no question of that. But what there is a lot of social noise, and we have to be able to quiet the social
challenge
noise.
to all of this.
And very often, you know, to your earlier point, it actually can really turn women away from some of these professions. I have friends who have graduated with, you know, very good degrees in civil engineering and so on, but the type of harassment, because we're not using words right now like sexual harassment and
We
so
are
on,
not.
the type of harassment that they
And
get on the job,
discrimination.
it actually is a deterrent. But for those who are able to quiet the social noise as well as make sure that they're in a safe environment, they can go on to be very successful. But there's a lot of noise that comes from a lot of different places. The insecurity that you spoke
but
to,
some
Mrs.
male
Christopher.
some males, the gendered male embrace it. But
Yes.
there's some who will tell you women is just a distraction on these sites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they go as far as to say that. You know, put them in something else. They're just a distraction on this site. The men not going to get to do their work. So I say, why can't they do their work?
Right. This year or sometime late last year, SKNS did a story on the first female fire truck driver.
Oh yes, I saw that.
The first time you had somebody certified, a female in the federation. I can't remember her name now, but she was certified to drive the fire truck. And what I realize is that on our social media, that received so many hits and likes, and because it's not something that people are accustomed to. But nonetheless, the question that must be asked is, what prevents a woman from driving a fire truck? She can drive a fire truck just like
She can drive a car.
a male can drive a... It's socially constructed roles and so on. But let us move on. I guess we can have a whole discussion on that. But there's a question I asked earlier in terms of women and their role in education, women dominating in the field of education, and how does this shift the balance of power and influence in the Caribbean society, Miss Gums? Or do you think it does?
To some extent it does, but women are still positioned at the lower end of the labor market in a number of our territories. And choosing careers that are not, that don't have great remuneration packages. Women are teachers by and large, and I've been a teacher for most of my professional life, so I know teachers don't make a lot of pay. Women are nurses, women are social workers. A lot of the areas in which women are positioned in large numbers
Yes.
are areas that in which salaries are not great. So I guess we will have to rethink or strategies to move women into other areas like engineering and surgery. They may become doctors, but a lot of them are family practitioners who often work and sometimes don't receive wages because clients can't pay, or it's all of those factors. So
Right.
women will have to choose areas of work that will help them to move up economically.
And there again, the choosing of the areas of work. Is it because somehow you spoke about the social constructs? And do you believe some of it has to do with the social constructs
Yes,
in the choosing?
Women engage a lot in care work in the
Care work.
domestic sphere, and that translates into working in areas that extend the care work.
Yes.
Looking after persons in healthcare, teachers do a lot of that, taking care of their students, social workers, same thing, extension of the care work.
Right. Now, women play a great role in terms of reproduction. We know that. And you mentioned it sometimes, the whole thing of caring, and sometimes people think that women's only role is that of reproduction. And at one time, women were boxed into their role was that of reproduction, of being mothers, of staying in the home and looking after children. We know that that has changed. In today's society, women are in the workplace.
As a matter of fact, they now have a triple role because they're in the communities, they're in the workplace, and they're in the home.
Yes, and we are going to come to that. But legislation still sometimes lags behind. For example, SRO, and I would like Ms. Gums to really speak to this, 11 of 2014, government legislation number 44, which speaks to maternity, paternity, and family emergency leave. There's actually gender imbalance. It is so glaring. A female public officer is granted maternity leave for a period of 3 months, while a male public officer who has completed 2 years service is entitled to paternity leave for 5 days and subject to a litany of terms and conditions. Now, listen to some of the terms and conditions. The officer, male officer, shall be granted 5 working days paid leave per confinement, up to a maximum of 2 confinements during his term of service. The officer shall provide documentation declaring that he is married to the expectant mother, or that he has been in a spousal relationship with the expectant mother for a period of not less than 5 years. You see the terms and conditions? The officer shall, at least 3 months prior to the expected date of birth of the child, produce a medical certificate stating the expected date of the birth. Paternity leave will be granted within 2 weeks of the birth of the child. Only 1 period of leave shall be granted, irrespective of whether more than 1 child is born as a result of the same pregnancy. And paternity leave may be taken in conjunction with another vacation leave. Now you see the disparity there? You see all of that? In other words, what are we saying?
Excuse me.
Miss Henry, yes.
You are shifting the debate, you know.
Yes, tell me.
Yeah, we are talking about issues that deal with women.
But that affects women too.
It affects women.
Yeah, but you
This
know,
affects women.
yeah, but you're shifting it.
Because they're not getting the support that they need.
It affects women because you don't have the male there to support the women
Of course.
in terms of that role, in terms of raising the child.
And if you're talking about gender equality, you got to look at the situation from all sides.
Yes.
True.
You have to look at the situation from all sides, because what this piece of legislation...
What is the culture?
What is the culture? You tell me what the culture is.
The woman is pregnant. She gets the baby. The gentleman comes with a husband or wife. Culturally, his input is minimal.
And this legislation...
It gives him 5 days. At least it increases it. Now, whether he takes it or not is a different story. Because you're now saying to the gentleman, you don't have to shirk. You are now entitled to 5 days to assist your mate in looking after this child.
The question is 5 days enough?
In more than 0,
It's adequate, inadequate.
they don't do it.
It's more than 0, but it's inadequate, isn't it?
I don't know.
Don't you think it should be at least a month?
Mrs.
A month,
Christopher,
wait, I will agree with you. It could be a month if there is a guarantee that he is going to participate in looking after the child. That's why he's given the time for, you know.
Now the legislation,
No, they have to-
we
Yes.
cannot legislate.
What?
We cannot legislate morality.
Yeah, you
we
can't
cannot
legislate
legislate certain
this is not
things. But
morality. The government is going to pay you to stay home to help look after the child. This is not a morality. This
no,
is
I
not-
would just use that as an example.
Yeah, but
but we
that's-
cannot legislate people's behavior and behavior. That's what I
But
mean
we are
to
now
say.
paying them to do what? If they don't do it, what?
No, I believe there are other underlying factors why these conditions
That's
are
a
set.
distraction.
And so you need to look into the conditions,
Yeah.
why they were set like that. Because it has to be something.
Yes.
And I think it goes back to our culture where we know in most cases the men don't stick around, they have
That's what
pregnancy
I
and they're
mean.
gone. But at the same time, if you are making laws, the laws has to be beneficial to all citizens.
I agree with you, but if you say give the man a month, then there should be some way of checking and ensuring.
He's doing what he should be doing.
Yes. I
Okay,
mean,
Mrs. Owen.
Police-
And I think
Anyway.
it would be interesting to look also at, since this legislation was passed,
How
how
many
many
men
people have
have taken
applied
the
for the
leave?
paternity
Yeah.
leave, because then we can really know also, is it too short, or have
But
there
some
been few
persons have
applicants
told me
but
that they have refused.
because of the
So
duration?
They have
Yeah.
refused.
Because of that.
Because
Yeah, it
they're
is. I
annoyed
mean,
about
5
it.
days
It's
is
ridiculous.
Some men see it as a deterrent before they even try to get involved. They already shut out. Some people
Yeah.
talk to me about that.
and limiting the number of children that
Yeah.
will be provided for. It isn't equitable to use.
It is
not.
not
It's not.
equitable.
It's
All right, so
and
go
and
back.
that is the issue we are talking
Right, so
about
let's
here.
go back to women's issue now.
Oh yes, that is also a woman's
It
issue.
is, it is.
Yeah, let's
Because
go. I agree. Let's-
we cannot
You
you
can't
know
separate the two.
we
You
cannot
just
create
can't
these
separate.
dichotomies where we are speaking about women in a vacuum, because when we're
No.
speaking about women's rights only came about because of a certain patriarchal society and how women were oppressed and treated by a patriarchal society which is male dominated. So we cannot talk about women issues without, there has to be a balance, and that's where the
too,
balance
I
and
is.
agree
again
with
too,
you, but-
and again too, if you're gonna speak about men, if you're going to accuse them or their perpetrator, you have to bring them into the conversation. They must be part of the conversation,
They're
and
in,
you
you
must
know.
listen to their views.
They're
You
in.
have to listen to their views too.
And you can continue.
We're continuing, and I'm going to continue with you, Miss
Yes,
Henry.
continue with me.
I want to know what is women's I want to know what are some of the ways that you think women should be contributing more to our economy, and that they are not contributing more,
Oh, so
and
that-
what barriers can be removed for this to happen. What are some of the ways women can be contributing more to our economy? Some of the areas.
Now, more suggests that they're not doing enough. I say word more. So you start there. You start off
Yes,
wrong.
yes, that's where
You
I start.
start wrong.
That is where I start.
So women contribute, especially tech sectors, needs, right? The availability of employment opportunities increase women's involvement. That we could see if you go back even to 1970, when we had the first factory, the first assembly plant. Women, because the participation rate was pretty low. So the women were at home, and the culture again, once you're married, it was expected that the wife would stay at home. The unmarried ones went into the fields with the men. A few married ones went too. But with the opening of these assembly plants, you had more and more women getting into the labor force. Now, you're asking me more. One of the problems I think we have is the structure of our economy. Our economy is structured in such a way that the majority of the work available to females are the low-paying ones. When you speak about you have 2,000 persons on an industrial site working at minimum wage with no prospects of coming out of poverty, that is a problem. Then you go into the public service, teachers, nurses, pay near minimum. So women are stuck traditionally in these low-paying jobs with little prospects of moving up in some cases. The issue of education comes in. And while it is true that females have access, because I taught at Bastia High, I taught even the first year education, first year economics at the University Center. Women, there were some males, but the majority were women. Follow them through. They go to university, they go to college, they come out. Some of them have equal qualification as the males. But we have some traditional belief that keep back our women. We have tons. I have learned that the majority of the lawyers are females. How many of them making a livable wage? They're out there scrunting. The males have organized themselves into companies. They've already captured the market for the business.
Corporate.
Right? They're doing corporate business, right? Sometimes it ends up being a family relation. That's where the money is, you know. The females come out and they have to work basically like clerks. Some of them have better qualifications than the males, or they go into as Crown Counsel. They go to medical school and they come out. And our cultural beliefs, oh, I don't want a woman to see me.
Yeah,
Even
because
some
they still
women,
think of them as being nurses.
I don't even nurses, they're thinking. The idea of a male going to a female doctor, he has to be very sick. Mine, he lives with a woman, you know. He lies with a woman, but for some reason, a woman seeing him naked is something, I don't know what she's going to do to him. So, she's unable to even to specialize. She has to be one of the few in that field to make a decent living.
But a large part of women's contribution goes into unpaid work.
Now I'm coming to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really and
I'm coming to
truly,
that.
you're going to come to that, and I have a question for Miss Gums pertaining
Yeah,
to that.
wait, I'm coming to that. Wait, I'm coming to that. So, what can we do more? Starting with the education. I taught at the high school, and some teachers in the technical division are culprits. A young lady may want to do technical drawing. She wants to become an architect. So she chooses technical drawing. She's practically sometimes ignored.
Yes.
Rooted into another area.
No. He may allow her to stay in, but he concentrates more on the male, or he's going to become the next architect, you know? And I suppose she could go down somewhere and draw. Maybe draw a square, you know? Or help a gentleman draw a plan. We don't think I'm going to this lady to draw my house plan. All right, then she may want to do woodwork. You don't want to mess up your hand? I mean, these are the teachers, you know. They're not encouraging females into fields where they can make a decent living.
Okay, and so therefore we go back to Miss Henry, what we had mentioned earlier in terms of the social constructs and the gender bias that is still present and so on, where we have certain
cultural beliefs.
Beliefs and putting people or
and
boxing
women are
people
channeled into a certain,
into
way
certain
and men go
roles,
into
that
another.
these are male roles and these are female roles, and so on. So we've had that discussion.
All right.
You know, before.
Let me continue now.
Sure.
So, we talk about STEM. We spoke about STEM. I spoke about the structure of our economy. We were in agriculture. Women in the fields, and
Yes.
at the top were the managers and the overlookers.
Yes.
We now move into tourism, and the women are making the beds and serving the tables.
So you're thinking that tourism has become the new plantation? Has the hotel become the new plantation?
Now I'm talking about the structure itself. Now,
Okay.
what we need to diversify. You know, we have in technology. We should have, our economy should include a part that heads in that direction. I heard the other day they were going to start teaching coding in
The primary
Park,
schools, yeah.
right? At the college, there was this thing with the robotics. I think there was one girl. But the one female I thought I heard him say. You mean to tell me they're doing it in CFBC? We're supposed to be pushing the females as well as the male. Every time you hear a company, somebody has a computer company or something company is a male. What happened to all the females who did the same course? Are they getting the same encouragement? Are the investors, basically the banks, because they go to the banks to get their loans. When you present yourself to the bank, do they think of you in terms of male and female? Well, I know the woman gonna soon married. When I was going to university, I had a story, you know, how women don't come back and they like to get married and stay. I mean, really, what are we doing? What are we doing to encourage women to move into those fields?
Yeah. What
These
are we
are
doing to
questions.
promote
So-
women? That's right.
So when you ask them what more, it is not that the women are not trying.
Sure.
Systems are in place. I mean, even in your division,
That hinder them.
even in your division, in the parliament, you have a handful. One elected one in our parliament, Honorable Marcelo. You have some more, they are nominated. Parties have all kind of gymnastics
Keep them out.
and reasons for not selecting females to run.
Okay, we are going to touch on that.
We're talking about more.
Yes, Miss
What
Henry.
more can we do?
But I really want to ask another question, and that I want to ask it of Miss Gums. And it will build on some of what you're saying, I think. Now, Miss Gums, women do a lot of work that they are not paid for. After the grueling job from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, they still must look after their families, many of them as single mothers. You know, most of our households are matrifocal. More than 50% of our nation's household, as the minister responsible for gender affairs
Single-headed.
of state, are matrifocal. They're single-headed.
Single-headed female household.
Matrifocal and patriarchal?
Evelyn loved it too.
Now, can you comment on this in terms of how women can be adversely affected in terms of their own advancement?
Well, first I must say that women do a lot of on-wage work. It is believed that women who have jobs outside of the home perform about 25 hours of care work per week. Now I believe that in some cases it's more than that, and so women are really what we call time poor. We work and we work, and Celia just alluded to the fact that we also perform duties in the community. Now, all of this work is absent from our GDPs. And I think it was in 2007 in the Quito Consensus that Latin America and the Caribbean agreed that they would quantify women's on-wage work and reflect it in the GDPs. Now, it's going to take time, it's going to take money to do that, but it's very, very important. To date, I think Trinidad and Tobago is the only country in the Caribbean that has legislation to ensure that women's contributions to the GDP through on-wage work, that those contributions are reflected.
Jamaica is also doing something.
Jamaica is doing it also? Okay, and in addition, what we are seeing is that this care work prevents women from advancing professionally. There are companies that don't want to promote women because they're going to take maternity leave. They can't stay till 10 o'clock for the board meetings and things like that. And so women are affected. It's like a double whammy. You have to invest so much of your time with our wages, and then it's affecting you in your professional life.
And then on top of that, what we have recognized in our society is that some of the women basically are working 2 and 3 jobs. Apart from looking after the family, they have 2 and 3 jobs outside of the home. And so therefore what happens is that they rely on an older child to supervise the children in the home, and sometimes what that leads to is not proper supervision,
neglect.
child abuse and neglect, and the watching of all kinds of things, and you know, and you're basically creating a sort of a, you know, it's a powder keg, really.
I
So I was just going to say to Ms. Gum's earlier point about the care work that women are engaged in, she reminded me of a study that I heard a colleague presenting on in relation to the predominance of male professors at the UWI, because there are far more male professors than female professors, and what their research indicated is that you had sort of between like 30s, 40s, you'd have a lot of male lecturers engaged in a lot of publishing, and you had female lecturers who might have come into the workforce at the same time, but that is the time when they may be having their children and they are at home, they are caring for the children. So what they've done is they've dialed back. So yes, the job would require them to publish, but they'll not be publishing as profusely as their male colleagues, who then become professor. And when the children have grown now and they are now independent young adults, then the women come back into publishing. So you'll find them becoming professors later on, or some may, decide not to get back into that after that time. So it kind of presents itself in a number of different
and
ways.
Care work during that time is unpaid.
Well, it's always, excuse me. Now, what it has been estimated, that if you were to add the value of the unpaid work, because unpaid work is not only care work. Women work unpaid in maybe the husband business,
Right.
in agriculture. So you can find women working. If you have a girlfriend, she might be home doing some of your work on the computer for you. So if you were to add all of these unpaid work, it would add about between 10 to 15% to our GDP. Now, I used to prepare the GDP, right? That was my job. So you could imagine whatever number you have, if you were to add 10 to 15%, it would automatically increase even our per capita.
Yes.
So when you begin to look at things like that, you said, look, women are they deserve more credit than is given to them.
True. But at the very same time, we do know as well that all work must not be paid work. Because we can talk about volunteer.
Can't be paid work.
All work can't be. We have volunteerism and so on.
Always saying that if you were to value, because remember that there's a proxy, If you look after children, the proxy for that will be the child care pay. If you clean house, there is the maid. So that is what they would do.
Yes.
There's a proxy for what they do. When there's no proxy, then you can't value it.
Right.
You can't value love and attention.
You can't pay people for those things.
But women, to me, they don't get the credit they deserve. Oh, they ain't doing nothing. They're just pulling up the place. And the term they use when you get children. Now, I don't want to pick on the bank. But a lot of these jobs that they have expect you, a female, to click in the morning 8 o'clock and come out 8 in the night. Young females, So you get a baby that obviously you either can't have any family life. You understand? No, even in the government service, because I was in there, some jobs, certain positions stifle you. So some women have to make up their mind, look, even though I'm qualified to be the head or the permanent secretary, I don't want that because
Can't accept it because
I have to go home in the afternoon to do homework. I used to have to come here in the morning, we cook before I go back home to cook and teach. It's hard.
Yes.
But our system, so sometimes people talk about, what women want. We want to have a level playing field. The same way you make allowances for the male. In some cases, the women could be allowed to come in a little later. So, you got to come in.
Time.
Yes,
Yeah, flex
8
time.
o'clock. And the child home school start 8:30 and you have a 5-year-old child home. The small things can be done
Sure.
to make life easier for women. We're not saying we want to take over the world and rule men.
You don't.
Because
Well, let me ask you that question, Miss Henry. You mentioned something. The feminist movement was born out of women's oppression in society. We know that. Do you think they have now gone overboard in trying to marginalize men?
What kind of question is that?
Don't
It's a question.
Don't get serious.
No, wait. I'm just trying to question that. Because, I mean, the rate at which the men attacking the women, I don't know how you come to that conclusion.
It's not a conclusion, it's a question.
If I may.
No, wait. Now marginalize. You see, if you have certain expectation, because I hear the same thing about women outperforming men and girls outperforming boys. Because to me, the expectation is that the male must come first and the man must do better. So whenever the female equalize or pass, she marginalizing. Right?
Yeah.
Now we got to be.
No.
If I could just make a point on that, because that I've often found that very interesting too, because in education, for example, there's a lot of discussion about
Yeah,
this, you know,
but marginalizing men.
there's this fear that, you know, the female, or what they're calling outperformance, or the male underperformance is a critical issue. However, when the statistics were reversed for many decades, it wasn't as much of a critical issue, and it wasn't
a
and also
problem.
when you look at the statistics, sometimes there's not that big a gap. Sometimes there is, and then definitely you need to look into
Yes.
why that is so. But then sometimes it's really not that big a gap. It's just that the female student
Expectation.
population may be outperforming by 5%, 6%. Of course, it varies across. But I think that, you know, Ms. Henry has a good point in the way that we respond to these things and how we are willing to look at changing the entire system if we think that it has now favored the woman over the man, or the girl over the boy. But
Yeah.
but also interesting. And the way that we use words is so significant too.
True.
Because
Language.
we use this term marginalization,
Marginalized.
underperformance of males or in schools or something. And it's really, that's not the right term, especially in all
Thank you.
cases. And we
Underachievement.
but it's not, that's not
No,
right either.
no.
So we had students attend a lecture that we had on that title. And in fact, the lecturer from St. Augustine, she's the head of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies there, Prof. Mohammed. She didn't really like the title that was provided to her. And as it turned out, when she made her presentation, we had a large group of students who came of their own interest from Charles E. Mills Secondary School. And the young men who were there said, you know, we don't like to hear that because it gives them this inferiority. It makes them
Yes,
feel like they're
inferior.
they're not going to
Wrong with
succeed.
them.
Yeah.
But what was interesting about that too is the earlier point about dialogue and having everyone engaged in a conversation, because often we speak about what should be occurring in the system without speaking to those who are directly affected by the decisions that we make. So it's all very interesting.
Sometimes I get a little confused about male marginalization.
You
You
know?
know why? Because if you look at the world structure or system, decisions affecting people and countries are made at the level of the UN. Who is up there? Male.
Right.
You come down to the regional machinery. Who is there? Male. You come down to the local level. Who is there? So how they sit, all of these people sit back and just watch male being marginalized? I don't understand it. I try to understand
That's
it.
what I
I
asked
think it's a
him.
misnomer.
It is a misnomer, and I threw
Yeah.
it,
It's a misnomer.
and I threw that question out because I knew it would be rather
Men
controversial.
have become
And-
quote unquote victims of male privilege.
It's just that.
Right.
You see, there,
Unfortunately,
there is a-
and
there
really
is
we
a-
do have to have that conversation.
there is an
Privilege does cause
expectation.
those
Yes.
problems.
There's an expectation that, you see, you go back to the same Bible, right? Women are the weaker vessel and women are the under whatever.
Certainly.
So therefore,
Indeed.
any kind of movement, any positive movement for a female is
Is
seen.
seen as yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we are going to go to the phone lines. And the numbers to call are 1718 577 2916. That's the overseas number. And the local number is 465 2555. So that's the overseas number 1718 577 2916. We welcome your calls. Now, Miss Gums, what is women's contribution to the reproductive sphere? And do you think that enough has been done to advance the reproductive rights of women in St. Kitts and Nevis?
First, we have to understand that the reproductive sphere refers to all of that work
Unpaid
that
work.
goes.
We have a
into-
call. We have a call.
Okay.
Working for you. Good afternoon. Hello.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to all of your guests there.
Yes, you can.
I must say that you have some powerful, powerful, powerful women in that studio there. And I want to congratulate all of them on the work that they've been doing here in this Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And I want them to continue to try their best to get more young women involved in learning how to be more powerful and to become a powerful lady in our society. And I hope that they can do it. Encourage the young ladies more, talk to them, find ways to get around and talk to them, and I'm sure this federation will be a better place. And thanks a lot for your contribution, ladies. Miss Henry, lots of love. Miss Gums, more love to you. Miss Christopher, Miss Lois, all of you, great women. Y'all take care.
Okay, thank you for your contribution. Okay, Miss Gums, we were talking about women and women's role in the reproductive sphere, reproductive rights, and so on.
Okay, I was saying that the reproductive sphere includes all of those things that women do to maintain family life, to support the productive sphere, because it's the work in the reproductive sphere that underpins the work in the productive sphere. People go to work, they've had breakfast, they're wearing clean clothes. All of those things are part and parcel of what has to be done to maintain the productive sphere. Now, you asked a question about women's reproductive rights.
Yes.
Okay, St. Kitts and Nevis is a signatory to CEDAW, Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. And that convention speaks to a woman's right to choose any contraceptive method that she so desires. For example, there was a time when a woman who decides to have a tubal ligation had to have the signature of her husband. That doesn't happen anymore, or it shouldn't happen, because there's some physicians, some surgeons who still probably are not aware of a woman's rights, and they probably would say that your husband has to come. And there was a time when Dr. Claxton, he's gone now, may his soul rest in peace, he told me that it was some of the nurses who were insisting on the signature of a man for the ligation. So, but those rights exist.
Mm-hmm. They do. Okay. Now,
and a woman could choose to have a baby every year. The employer has no right to tell her that she shouldn't be pregnant again. And that too is one of the issues with women. Employers sometimes feel that you're getting pregnant too often, and that's really not their business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically it affects their production, but it's your right to be pregnant every year if you would like to be.
Right.
But if you go back to the law, the Security of Employment Act,
it can be terminated because of pregnancy.
Because what used to happen is that if sometime when you go on maternity leave, your boss hires somebody in your place, and when you come back out, they turn you away. Well, the law now says they cannot do it, because some of them still try, you know. They find an excuse. Oh, every minute you're going on maternity leave, and even the government was contravening women's rights. Because once you weren't married, you could not get a child. Talk about the females, and go back to work. So that the rights have been saying now, if you are thinking of abortion, I'm coming straight to you, Mr. Williams.
Yes, that's part of it.
I know that, you know. I know you're thinking about abortion, right? It is still illegal in St. Kitts. Now you will therefore have to decide, is it a constitutional right a woman has or what? Ms. Gums could answer that question.
If it's a constitutional right to terminate a pregnancy?
Do you have the right?
If it's illegal, I would say no. But case by case situation. I don't want to stand in judgment over anyone. I do know that when a woman decides to terminate a pregnancy, she has done and thought of a lot of things prior to her making that decision. And so I don't stand in judgment over people. I know what my own position would be, but I respect the rights of other people.
Okay, let's move on from that because that in itself is a very controversial area and can move into moral philosophy, which is with ethics and so
what
on.
is the role of the
And
state?
I'm
What's
quite
the role of
familiar
the-
with,
yeah.
because I did quite a lot of that in my studies and so on, in terms of moral philosophy and ethics and those issues. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams, and good afternoon to the good panelists of females on the program.
Good afternoon.
Carl Brown here, and good afternoon to the listening public home and abroad. Ladies, Miss Henry, I listened to you a while ago, and I hear you complaining of not enough women in Parliament. But Miss Henry, that is all you ladies' fault, Blame yourself, because you all is who put all these men in the Parliament. Everywhere in the world, or most countries and nations in the world, when you look around, who are pushing up the men? The same women. When you ask the women to come forward, they trash back and they run and they say, put a man forward. But you all must congratulate yourself because the Deputy Governor General in Nevis is a female. The Calypso Queen is a female back to back. So congratulate yourself. And everywhere you go, even in the schools, in all the jobs that you all complain about this afternoon, 99.8% of them are run and controlled by women. Everywhere you go in the working field, when you step in, the first person you meet is a woman. Look in security now. We have so many security firms in the Federation right now, and they are outnumbering the men in that job, which is female. Look around, ladies.
Okay, that's thank you, Carl, for you.
Right, so ladies, you all complaining here. About 10, 15 years ago, you all had a strong argument with that. But of recent, that argument, I would say null and void. In the Parliament, you all got a strong argument here. But when you look around throughout the world, you all are presidents, you all are premiers, prime ministers, everything. You all are school teachers, headmasters, permanent secretaries. So ladies, come on, big up yourself. You all have moved abundantly in a large, significant way and have improved over the last 12 years or so, and increase your numbers in getting equality as you all always been arguing
Okay,
about.
Carl, thank you. You've made your point. Thank you very much. What he has said, I mean,
You want me to respond?
women being in certain positions.
Respond.
Sylvian, women being in certain positions. I am not a person for just a woman being in a position because she's a woman, or a man being in a position because he's a man. But what do you bring? What values do you bring to the position? What sort of influence do you bring? What sort of impact do you hope to make by being in that position? I think for me, those are the fundamental questions. For example, let me ask you, Miss Henry, post-independence, working for you, good afternoon.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Yes, we are hearing you.
My good friend Leslie
Yes.
and the ladies of this country, especially Queen Miss Henry, a veteran in this St. Kitts Nevis or RV1. Ladies, I would like to applaud you for a work well done over there in the ministry up King Road there. And what I like to see you all, the direction I would like to see you all moving in right now is to empower we young girls them who is drinking rum on this trip. It's not a good sign for women. You never used to see that with the elder women them. If they like drink, they buy the drink and go home. And then the dress code of these women is awful. They're
Okay.
adopting the Spanish style, and that ain't think it.
Yeah.
People in West, when I call Robert Bracho name, but Robert Bracho in the leadership of this country for them decades gone, he had a grab and a lot of things. And these young men who went college, I'm seeing it from them. I'm seeing it as a young man
Yeah,
around
but
back here.
we're seeing a lot of the sagging and the saggers and so on. That's not acceptable either. Jam down.
That's why sometimes I gotta hold my head and ball, asking if it's deals here we gotta leave this country for. The women and the young girls them who should be carrying the country, Miss Henry, they're drinking rum harder than men.
Okay, jam
And that is
down.
not a nice sign.
Okay, jam down.
And the next thing I want to get over to the lady there, Miss Christopher, in she ministry over there. You know, the Focus University is Congress in this country, you know. And when information come about some of your workers, them, who hearing abuse with young girls, especially Spanish, and when police in and they're taking up phone, calling the person who abusing these young girls.
Okay.
We're not going to tolerate that, you know.
Right, that's
Have a good day, Miss Christopher and the girls. I applaud you all. But keep focus in that office.
Okay, jam down. You're raising a number of issues that, you know, that can be discussed, but we don't have enough time on this program. But it keeps coming back. Post-independence, 35 years, we have only had 4 cabinet ministers. The Honorable Wendy Phipps, the Honorable Jacinth Henry Martin, the Honorable Marcella Liebert, and the Honorable Constance Mitchell. Only 4 cabinet ministers. Women are poorly represented in the legislature. I think that we have agreed on that. And who is to blame and who is not to be blamed? The fact of the matter is women are poorly represented. And my question coming out of that, though, is how does this affect laws being made for the betterment of women in the society? How does it affect? And not only that, do you think that the female politicians who have represented us and who are representing us can do more to advance women's causes and rights in St. Kitts and Nevis?
I say.
Miss Henry, we have a call. Let's take that.
Right.
That's our final call. Working for you, good afternoon.
Hey, thank you for taking my call.
That's the final one.
You know, you just touched a subject there that I need to ask this question. Is there any area in the Constitution or in the laws of this federation that you ladies have taken a look at and needs to be changed for the benefit of making women much more stronger in this federation?
Okay. How would you answer that? Thank you for your question.
Ingrid, answer him.
I would like to see, and shortly after the marijuana legislation, someone called me and reminded me that while I worked in gender, I was advocating for the state to be the virtual complainant in sexual offenses against children. And that is something that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Parents, some of us who are delinquent, cannot be depended on to rightfully represent the interests of our children in matters of sexual offenses against them, especially when those people are family members, quote-unquote friends of the family, because you can't be my friend if you violate my child. So in cases like those, sometimes the matter is taken out of the court completely. The parent becomes a hostile witness, and so that the person who perpetuated the crime on the child is allowed to go free. He may pay $10,000 or $15,000 to keep the matter out of the court. So I would like to see, this is a very important piece of legislation. A lot of angry females are angry because they were not given justice for the violations against them as children.
Okay.
And sexual offenses can take 2 lifetimes to work through and live down.
Right.
That's why we no longer have statutes of limitations on sexual offenses. You can
Sure.
report anytime.
Yes.
So I would like to see that. That is a critical piece of, well, like a critical legislative change that is needed. Parents should no longer be allowed to be the virtual complainants in matters affecting minor sexual matters.
In terms of representation in Parliament, what I would like to see is that political parties include women in their ticket to run. I mean, they have,
Yes.
some of them have, but sometimes they are in places that is very difficult for them, and so they're not able to make it to Parliament.
You
But
mean
have-
they're in constituencies
right.
that okay.
That they
you
cannot win.
Right,
Yes.
they cannot win. So those constituencies where it's easier to win. I know no man is going to roll over and say, come and take my seat. But they need to consider that. If we're serious about getting more women in there to make a difference and have, well, not equal representation, but have women's voices be heard, then we got to start at the political parties.
No,
because
Miss-
as the guy was saying, women are the ones who do the work. Women are the ones who vote for them in droves and so on. So at least the party should begin to consider.
Yes, women are the backbone of political parties,
Yeah.
as they are the backbone of so many other things, like the church.
And I think
And
as
so
women,
on.
I think as women, we also need to be held responsible for stepping up
Yes.
in those arenas as well, because I think very often, for a lot of the reasons that we've discussed on the program
It's
today,
not for lack of training, you know.
No,
Miss Owen.
'cause
It's
we-
not
we
for
have
lack
had
of training,
training
because we have
sessions.
trained over 150
Yes.
women in St. Kitts.
well, I don't think it has anything to do with training.
No.
Culture.
But I am not sure what it is, and as Miss Gomes just said, probably it's a cultural challenge, one, and the climate.
It's more, it's
think
more than that.
the
It's more than
climate
that,
also,
right?
the political climate is what?
Now let's go back to CEDAW. She spoke about the UN Convention that we signed. We spoke about 50-50, you know. Countries,
Yes.
Right, so we're coming to that. We signed the convention. In some countries, it was put into their constitution that there must be a certain percentage of women
In the parliament.
in parliament. Now, if we were, when we're going to have amendment to the constitution, put it in there, we want a certain percentage. Then the onus will be on the parties,
It will be
wait,
30%.
the onus will be on the political parties to field candidates to ensure that they end up in the...
You're talking about affirmative action, which some people don't really agree.
Well, we don't care who don't like it. I for one, I have heard the present Honorable Marcella says she's not for it. I've heard Honorable Wendy says she's not for it. But unless we have affirmative action without any amendment to our constitution, it will not happen. In the political parties, you have this boys network.
Your
When they're
voice
ready to
network.
recruit candidates, they go for their friends. And in constituencies, and I know for a fact, women have been selected in constituencies to run, but then the party hierarchy
Change it.
choose a male over the constituency choice. So if you're going to have that situation, unless we have it, they're not going to get in. And so the women themselves, those who are being elected, they owe it to the other women to agitate. Unless you are at the table where decisions are made, like in cabinet, a man can't represent fully women's issues. We need females in there. Just that thing alone. You have to be at the table to have your say.
Okay.
And I
the
get to
Westminster
Okay,
system,
yes, go ahead, Mr.
and the
Gums.
Westminster system has not served us well as a region, and we do need to look at proportional representation, which, by the way, will facilitate women's advancement to political decisions.
Yes,
And
because
women-
right now we have first
Hasn't
past the
served us
post.
well, no.
Women
It's-
brings
it's
a
chaotic.
totally different perspective to things.
Yeah. Leadership,
that need,
everything.
right, to leadership. So that is one of the good reasons for improving the number of women in parliament. So you have this balanced discussion.
Yeah. Similarly for us at the University of the West Indies, for the first time now, we have 50-50 at the principal level, because
Yes,
we have two male
50-50.
Principals and two
So right,
female
it's a
principals,
balanced
and I think
view.
it does
Right,
really
so there's a
change
balance
the,
view,
Change, you know,
the
yes,
strategy and the
perspective,
yeah,
how
the
you look at
perspective.
things.
Okay, fine. Now, we're leaving now because we're out of time.
Okay.
But I want to ask one question. It's a bit controversial. We talk about mothers and we're talking about gender. You have gender affairs, and my question is, what kind of support is being offered by the Department of Gender Affairs for the LGBTQ community? Do issues come to the department in terms of discrimination and violence towards persons of that community, and how is it dealt with? We are talking here in the context of women.
Well, the women in that
I
situation.
have not seen any cases like that. But what I do know is that in the Department of Gender, they used to accommodate them to meet. And at one point in time, they used to meet at the Women's Training Center. No big fanfare to let people know they're there, so on.
Right.
But they go on to discuss their issues, especially issues of health and so on. I have not met with a group. I have heard things, but nobody has come officially to meet with us. So we could sit down and create some sort of a program, hear what they have to say, and see how we can help.
Okay. Okay, we're out of time. Your parting words, starting with Miss Christopher, and Miss Henry is eager to say something. We only have 1 minute to wrap up.
Well, I would say the Department of Gender Affairs, we are looking for partners. We want to hear more voices. So wherever you are and you want to be a part of our program, just come and see us. We're willing to help.
Sure. Miss Henry.
Well, I want to say to women, just be the best you can, because there are other women coming behind you.
Right. Mrs. Owen.
Right. I just really want to express gratitude to Miss Christopher and to you, Lazroy, for having me here, and by extension, of course, the University of the West Indies, and to encourage all of the listeners to really consider jumping on, if you're not on already, that train to lifelong learning. And it's never too late, and there are so many exciting things that we can do now that I'd really like to encourage the women, especially who are listening, but everyone who's listening, to do that.
Right. Miss Gums.
I just want to say that women always work. I know sometimes we hear people say, oh, my mother doesn't work. And I usually say, you mean she doesn't work outside of the house? So it's our on-wage work that has built economies worldwide, that sustains the productive sphere. And I do hope that the time will come when our own sustainable development will have the human capacity and the financial resources to count the on-wage work of women in this country and to reflect it in the national accounts.
Sure.
And I want to say one thing, and this is for the men out there. You are our friends, you are our allies.
True.
Come and work with us. We need you. We cannot solve the problems without you. So let's work together and see how we could solve some of these issues that we're having.
Right. No, I want to thank.
Welcome aboard.
I want to thank all of you, Mrs. Christopher, Miss Henry, Mrs. Owen, and Miss Gums. I think we have had a very lively discussion on such an important topic: the contribution, the achievements of women, which really must be put on a pedestal for everybody to see.
Sure.
The scripture says you don't light a lamp and put it on a tub, a bushel. You put it on a stand so that everybody can really see, that it may illuminate our society, and more people will come forward and actually show their light. Because I think that there are some people, and in this case, some women who are really hiding their light.
Sure.
Because of the society that has told them, look, you must hide your light. You know, and I think that that is one of the work that, part of the work that your department, Mrs. Christopher, is doing, helping women to shine their light and to be lights, really, in this world. So I want to thank all of you very much. I want to wish you happy International Women's Day when it comes on March 8th. And to all the women in the world as well, happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much.
You have been listening to another edition of Working for You. Today we discussed International Women's Day and the importance of recognizing and bigging up our women in society, their contributions and their achievements. Next week, we will be back for another edition of Working for You. Thank you to all of our callers and all of our listeners to today's program. I am Les Roy Williams. We'll see you next week.
Working for You. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Les Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.